Around 5,000 years ago, humans climbed onto the back of a wild animal and everything changed. We tamed the horse, and suddenly we could travel faster, carry more, and cross distances that once took weeks. The horse reshaped human history. War, trade, travel, all transformed by one domesticated animal. But here's a question that should stop you in your tracks. For thousands of years, ancient humans lived side by side with a far more powerful animal. An animal the size of a small house. 10 tons of muscle, a living mountain of meat, fur, and raw power, the woolly mammoth, a creature that could carry enormous loads, smash through snow, and tower over any horse. Ancient humans hunted them, ate them, built shelters from their bones. They knew mammoths intimately. So why, with all that power walking right beside them, did humans never ride the mammoth? Why is there no mammoth cavalry in the history books? No woolly beasts pulling ancient sleds? No riders on their backs? It seems like the obvious thing to do, and yet, it never happened. The answer reveals something deep about which animals we can tame and which we simply can't. Just imagine it for a second. A warrior in furs, spear in hand, riding into battle on the back of a towering woolly mammoth. It sounds like something out of a fantasy film, and that's exactly the point. It only ever existed in imagination. We put humans on the backs of horses, camels, elephants, even reindeer and yaks. We turned wild beasts into partners across the whole planet. But the mightiest beast that ever shared our world, the one that could have carried the most and crushed the most, we never once climbed aboard. At first, this sounds like a silly question, but it's actually one of the most revealing questions in all of human history. Because taming an animal isn't a choice humans simply make. It's something the animal has to allow, by its very biology. And most animals, no matter how useful they'd be, simply refuse to be tamed. Here's a fact that stuns most people. Of all the large mammals on Earth, around 148 species, humans have only ever fully domesticated about 14. 14 out of 148. The horse, the cow, the pig, the sheep, the goat, and a few others. That's almost the entire list. Every other giant, powerful, useful-looking animal, we failed, or never even could. There's a specific checklist an animal has to pass to be domesticated, and the mammoth fails it, spectacularly. So let's put the mammoth through that checklist, one requirement at a time, and watch exactly where it falls apart. The animals we did tame reshaped civilization. The ones we couldn't tame stayed wild forever, no matter how much we wanted them. So the mammoth question isn't really about mammoths. It's about a hidden set of rules that decides which animals join us and which never can. And the animals that failed the test didn't fail because they were weak or useless. Often, they failed precisely because they were too big, too wild, or too free. Strength and usefulness were never enough. In fact, sometimes the more powerful the animal, the less likely we could ever tame it. The mammoth sits at the very far end of that scale. Maximum power, minimum chance. First, we have to clear up a confusion that trips up almost everyone. There's a huge difference between taming an animal and domesticating it. Taming is about one single animal. You catch a wild creature and through patience, or force, you get it to tolerate humans. But that animal is still wild inside. Its babies would be just as wild. You'd have to tame each one, from scratch, forever. Domestication is something completely different. It's changing an entire species over many generations until it's born ready to live with humans. A domesticated animal is genetically shaped for us. A puppy is born wanting to be near people. A wild wolf cub never will be. And here is the key that unlocks the whole mammoth mystery. The perfect example is the elephant, the mammoth's closest living relative. People have worked with elephants for over 4,000 years. In India, they hauled timber, carried kings, and marched into war. So elephants are domesticated, right? Wrong. This is the twist almost nobody knows. Elephants have never been truly domesticated, not once, in all of history. Every working elephant you've ever heard of was caught in the wild as a young animal and tamed by hand. They are wild animals, tamed one by one every single generation. We never turn them into a domestic species like the horse. Think about what that means. If we couldn't domesticate the elephant in 4,000 years of trying, what chance did ancient humans have with its bigger, wilder, Ice Age cousin, the mammoth? To see why, let's look at exactly what makes an animal impossible to domesticate, starting with the mammoth's biggest problem of all, time. Think of it like the difference between a guest and a family member. A tamed animal is a guest who tolerates you. A domesticated one is family, born into your world. Turning a wild species into family takes centuries of careful breeding. It is one of the slowest, hardest things humans have ever done. And it only works if the animal cooperates at every single step. Most never do. The dog is the clearest success story. Over thousands of years, wolves that tolerated humans slowly became dogs, born loving us, reading our faces, living in our homes. That transformation is written into the dog's very genes now. It cannot be undone. That is what real domestication means. Taming a single mammoth calf, by contrast, would change nothing about the species. Its wildness would live on in every other mammoth on the plains. The first Great Barrier is one most people never think about: how long the animal takes to grow up. For domestication to be worth it, an animal has to reach useful size fast. Every day you feed it before it can work is a day of pure cost. A horse can be ridden in a couple of years. A cow, a pig, a goat all grow up quickly, ready to work or feed you within a year or two. Now the mammoth. Like elephants, a mammoth needed around 15 years to reach full adult size. 15 years! Think about what that actually meant for an Ice Age human. You would have to find a baby mammoth, protect it, and feed it enormous amounts of food every single day for 15 years before it was even grown enough to carry you. 15 years of pouring resources into an animal that gives nothing back yet. And remember who these people were. Ice Age humans were mostly mobile hunter-gatherers. They followed the herds. They moved with the seasons. They did not stay in one place for 15 years. They often didn't stay for 15 weeks. The patience and stability that raising a mammoth demanded simply did not fit the lives they lived. A horse gives you a return in 2 years. A mammoth asks for 15, with no guarantee it survives or stays tame. For a wandering Ice Age band, that math was simply impossible. And this same barrier is exactly why we never truly domesticated the elephant either. But the 15-year wait was only the beginning of the problem, because during all those years, you'd have to feed it, and a mammoth's appetite is a nightmare. 15 years is longer than many Ice Age humans could expect to raise even their own children to adulthood. Investing that much time in a single animal, with no promise it would even work, was a gamble no survival-focused group could take. Compare that to a dog, ready to help in under a year, or a chicken, useful in months. Speed of growth is quietly one of the biggest reasons some animals joined us and others didn't. A slow-growing animal is a long, risky bet. Anything could happen in 15 years. Illness, accident, starvation, or the animal simply never becoming tame. And during those 15 long years, the young mammoth is not just useless, it's a constant liability, needing protection from predators, from cold, from starvation. A herder raising a horse sees a return before their own children have grown. A mammoth raiser might grow old waiting. The second barrier is appetite. To keep an animal, you have to feed it, and the bigger the animal, the more it eats. A mammoth is one of the largest land animals that ever lived, and it ate like it. Like modern elephants, a mammoth likely spent most of its waking hours eating, up to 18 hours a day, hoovering up hundreds of pounds of grass, bark, and plants every single day. A horse grazes and largely feeds itself on open grassland, but an animal that needs hundreds of pounds a day is a different beast entirely. If you tried to keep even one mammoth, feeding it would become a full-time job for your whole group. Now try to keep a herd of them, because you'd need a herd to breed more. The food demand becomes utterly impossible, and this is the Ice Age. Food was often scarce. Winters were brutal. Plants died back for months at a time. Ancient humans struggled to feed themselves through those winters. The idea of also feeding a herd of 10-ton giants was pure fantasy. A domestic animal has to more or less pay for itself. A mammoth would eat your entire world and still be hungry. So even if you had 15 years to spare, you couldn't afford to fill that endless stomach. But suppose you somehow managed both. You'd still hit a wall that stops domestication cold. An adult elephant today eats up to 300 pounds of food a day. A mammoth built for the cold may have needed even more. Multiply that across the years it takes to raise one, and the total amount of food is almost beyond imagining. A horse can share the same grassland as its herder and largely feed itself. That's part of why it worked so well. A mammoth, by contrast, would strip the land bare, forcing you to keep moving just to find enough for it to eat. And this wasn't a rich, green world. The Ice Age was a harsh, cold, often barren place where food could vanish under snow for half the year. Every mouth was a burden in lean times. A mouth that size, eating without end, was a burden no group could carry. The third barrier is the quiet killer of domestication: breeding in captivity. To domesticate a species, you can't just tame animals you catch. You need them to breed for you, generation after generation under your care. That's the only way to slowly shape a wild animal into a tame one. No breeding in captivity, no domestication. Full stop. And here's the problem. Many animals simply refuse to breed while in human hands. They get stressed. They need space, privacy, complex courtship rituals, things a pen or a camp can't provide. And once again, the elephant proves the point perfectly. Even today, with all our science and zoos, elephants breed poorly in captivity. It's so difficult that many working elephants are still caught from the wild. 4,000 years of working with elephants and we still can't reliably breed them ourselves. Now picture the mammoth, even larger, living in scattered herds across vast frozen plains, with who knows what mating needs. The chance of ancient humans getting mammoths to calmly breed inside a camp on demand was essentially zero. And without breeding, there is no domestication. At best, you could tame a single captured calf and start all over again with the next. 3 strikes already. Too slow to grow, too costly to feed, too difficult to breed. But the mammoth has one more problem, and this one could get you killed. Breeding is where even our modern zoos with unlimited resources still struggle with elephants today. If we can't reliably do it now with all our knowledge, a wandering Ice Age band had no hope of it at all. Some animals are simply too sensitive, too particular, or too stressed to reproduce anywhere but in the wild on their own terms. The cheetah is another famous example, prized for thousands of years, but it almost never bred in captivity, so it was never domesticated either. The mammoth almost certainly belonged to this same stubborn group, magnificent but unwilling to build its family in a human camp. And you can't build a working population from captured calves alone. Every animal you don't breed yourself is one you have to risk your life to catch in the wild. A domestic species has to renew itself, quietly, under your care. The mammoth would have forced you back into the wild, again and again, forever. The fourth barrier is temperament, and with a 10-ton animal, temperament isn't just inconvenient, it's deadly. To be domesticated, an animal needs a calm, manageable nature. It can't be too aggressive and it can't panic easily. Here's a perfect example of how much this matters. The zebra. A zebra looks almost exactly like a horse. People have tried many times to tame and ride them, but zebras are far more aggressive and unpredictable than horses. They bite and don't let go. They panic violently. So despite looking like a horse, the zebra was never domesticated. Its temperament alone disqualified it. Now scale that problem up to an animal the size of a house. A frightened horse might throw you. A frightened mammoth could flatten your entire camp in seconds. A wild animal that huge in a moment of panic is an unstoppable force, and you cannot unscare 10 tons of muscle. Elephants, even after years of taming, still have sudden outbursts. Handlers are sometimes hurt or killed. And that's the tamer's smaller cousin. There's also the matter of how the herd is organized. Domestication works best when an animal's herd follows a leader, because then a human can slot into that role and control the whole group. Horses and cattle have this. It's why one herder can move many. We don't fully know how mammoth herds were structured, but like elephants, they were likely led by experienced females. With strong family bonds, a stranger couldn't simply command. Put it all together, and a mammoth is a slow-growing, endlessly hungry, hard-to-breed, potentially panicking giant with a herd you can't easily command. It fails almost every test of domestication at once. So the real surprise isn't that we never rode mammoths, it's that we ever imagined we could. Even the animals we did domesticate can be dangerous. A startled horse or a protective bull hurts people every year. Now multiply that danger by the weight of 10 cars. A single frightened mammoth is a disaster no camp could survive. Domestication favored animals that stay calm under pressure and accept a human as their leader without a fight. The mammoth, powerful and wild, with deep family bonds of its own, was never going to simply hand that leadership over. The American bison is another giant we never tamed. Strong, useful, everywhere across the plains, but unpredictable and dangerous, so it stayed wild. Being big and useful was never the point. The animal also had to be safe to be around, day after day, year after year. The mammoth simply wasn't. And this leads to the most important point of all, one that clears our ancestors of any foolishness. It's tempting to think ancient humans just never figured mammoths out, that they weren't clever enough. That's completely wrong. Ancient humans were every bit as intelligent as you. They were master survivors, expert hunters, brilliant tool makers. They understood animals better than almost anyone alive today. They read the land, the herds, the seasons like a book. They didn't fail to domesticate the mammoth because they were primitive. They didn't because it was essentially impossible. The limits weren't in the humans, they were in the animal. The mammoth's own biology slammed every door shut. Remember the numbers. Out of 148 big mammals, only 14 made it. That's not human failure, that's how rare a domesticable animal actually is. Most large animals fail at least one requirement. The mammoth failed nearly all of them. The horse almost miraculously passed every single one. We didn't tame the horse because we were smart and skip the mammoth because we were dumb. We tamed the horse because the horse almost uniquely led us. Ancient humans read the mammoth perfectly. They saw a magnificent, powerful, utterly untamable animal, and they made a different choice about what to do with it. A choice that, in the end, carries a heavy and haunting irony. In fact, ancient humans domesticated exactly the animals that could be domesticated and left the rest alone. That's not failure, that's wisdom. They spent their intelligence where it could actually pay off, on dogs and later on the animals that fed and carried whole civilizations. Consider everything ancient humans did achieve. They crossed oceans, survived ice ages, painted caves, invented tools, and tamed the wolf into a loyal friend. These were not people who lacked ambition or cleverness. If the mammoth could have been tamed, they would have found a way. It couldn't, so they didn't. The empty space in the history books where mammoth riders should be isn't a gap in human genius. It's a monument to the stubborn wildness of one magnificent animal. So, why didn't ancient humans ride mammoths? Because the mammoth broke every rule of domestication. Too slow to grow, too hungry to feed, too hard to breed, too dangerous to control. It was never a failure of human intelligence. It was the simple, unbending biology of the animal itself. The dream of a mammoth cavalry, of woolly giants carrying our ancestors across the ice. It was always just that, a dream. But there's a final twist to this story, a dark one. Because ancient humans and mammoths did have a relationship, just not the one we might wish for. We couldn't tame them, so instead, we hunted them. For thousands of years, humans hunted mammoths for meat, for fur, for their great curved tusks and bones. And slowly, as the ice age ended and the climate warmed, the great herds began to vanish. Warming world, shrinking habitat, and the steady pressure of human hunting, together, they were too much. One by one, the mammoths disappeared. Until, a few thousand years ago, the very last of them died, and the species was gone forever. So here is the haunting truth. We never got to ride the mammoth. We never tamed that living mountain of power. The one lasting mark we left on the mammoth wasn't a saddle or a harness or a bond of friendship. It was their disappearance. In the end, we didn't master the mammoth. We outlived it. And maybe that's the real answer to why no one ever rode a mammoth. By the time we might have learned how, there were none left to ride. There's even a strange modern coda to this story. Scientists today are working to bring the mammoth back through genetics. So the animal we could never tame and may have helped wipe out might one day walk the earth again because of us. It's worth pausing on that irony. The very traits that made mammoths impossible to tame, their size, their power, their appetite, also made them a magnificent prize to hunt. We wanted what the mammoth had. We just could never do it the gentle way. So we took it the only way that worked for us. For tens of thousands of years, the mammoth and the humans shared the same frozen world, locked in a relationship of hunter and hunted, never partner and rider. We knew their trails, their habits, their herds. We knew everything about them, except how to make them ours. Picture that last mammoth, somewhere on a cold northern island, thousands of years after the rest were gone. No herd, no humans riding it, just the final page of a story that lasted millions of years. It was never ours to ride. It was never ours to tame. In the end, the mammoth stayed exactly what it had always been, wild, free, and utterly beyond our reach.